What if I told you this chapter isn't about love beginning? It's about love being watched. What if I told you the real danger here isn't heartbreak, it's false comfort? Because in this chapter, everyone seems busy, talking, visiting, laughing, making plans. But underneath all of it, something fragile is being tested. Mr. Collins leaves, full of confidence and self-importance, dreaming of a future that feels secure to him. The house fills again with relatives, conversation, and the noise of Christmas cheer. On the surface, it looks like recovery, but it isn't. Jane Bennet is still healing from a wound no one can see. Elizabeth is still angry about a truth no one wants to admit, and Mrs. Bennet is still convinced that every misfortune can be traced back to one mistake. Then comes a different kind of presence. A sensible aunt, a careful observer, someone who doesn't shout but notices. She watches smiles that last a second too long, conversations that lean too close, affection that feels easy but dangerous. And quietly, without drama, a new question enters the story. Is this attachment harmless, or is it another mistake forming right in front of them? Because not every problem announces itself. Some arrive disguised as charm, as attention, as comfort during a vulnerable moment. This chapter is not loud, it is observant. It shows how heartbreak can make people careless, how praise can blur judgment, and how attraction, when encouraged at the wrong time, can lead somewhere it never meant to go. Stay with me, because by the end of this chapter, you won't be asking who loves whom. You'll be asking who should have stopped it sooner. After a week filled with promises of love and plans for happiness, Saturday arrived, and Mr. Collins was called away from Charlotte. He left with great seriousness, already imagining the future. The pain of parting, at least on his side, was softened by preparation. He believed that when he returned to Hertfordshire, the wedding date would soon be fixed, the day that would make him, as he liked to say, the happiest of men. At Longbourn, he took his leave with the same stiff politeness as before. He wished his cousin's health and happiness once again, and promised Mr. Bennet another letter of thanks. On the following Monday, Longbourn filled again. Mrs. Bennet's brother, Mr. Gardiner, arrived with his wife to spend Christmas. Mr. Gardiner was a sensible, well-mannered man, quiet, thoughtful, and far superior to his sister in both judgment and education. Though he lived by trade, his manners would have surprised anyone who believed good breeding belonged only to wealth. Mrs. Gardiner was younger than Mrs. Bennet, elegant, intelligent, and warm in nature. She was greatly loved by her nieces, especially Jane and Elizabeth, who had often stayed with her in London. At first, Mrs. Gardiner was busy distributing presents and sharing news of new fashions. After that, she listened. Mrs. Bennet had much to say. She complained of being badly treated. 2 of her daughters, she insisted, had nearly been married, and now neither was. She did not blame Jane, who had done all she could, but Elizabeth, in her view, had ruined everything by refusing Mr. Collins. If only she had accepted him, Mrs. Bennet declared, she herself would not have been humiliated, the Lucases would not be celebrating, and the Longbourn estate would not still be entailed away. Mrs. Gardiner answered calmly and gently changed the subject. Later, when she was alone with Elizabeth, she spoke more openly. She admitted that the match between Jane and Mr. Bingley had seemed promising, and regretted that it had ended. But she reminded Elizabeth that such disappointments were common. Young men often fall in love quickly and forget just as easily when separated. Elizabeth disagreed. This, she insisted, was not an accident. It was interference. A man of independent fortune does not abandon a woman he truly cares for without pressure. Mrs. Gardiner questioned the strength of Bingley's feelings. Words like deeply in love, she said, were often used carelessly.
Elizabeth defended her sister firmly. Bingley had been attentive to Jane in a way that could not be mistaken. He had ignored others, forgotten conversations, and shown clear signs of preference. Mrs. Gardiner sympathized with Jane and suggested a change of scene. Perhaps Jane should return to London with them. Distance from home and from constant reminders might help her recover. Elizabeth welcomed the idea and believed Jane would accept. Mrs. Gardiner hoped that Jane's feelings would not be influenced by any chance of seeing Mr. Bingley in London. Their circles were different, and it was unlikely they would meet unless he made a deliberate effort. Yet, despite her confidence, Elizabeth felt uncertain. She could not fully believe that all hope was gone. Sometimes she even thought it possible that Bingley's affection might return. Jane accepted her aunt's invitation gladly. She hoped to see Caroline Bingley occasionally, but without risk of meeting her brother. The Gardiners stayed a week at Longbourn, and the house was rarely quiet. There were dinners, visits, and gatherings almost every day. Officers often joined them, and Mr. Wickham was always among them. Mrs. Gardiner watched closely. She noticed the ease between Elizabeth and Wickham, their preference for each other's company. Though she did not believe them deeply attached, she was uneasy enough to resolve to speak to Elizabeth privately before leaving. Wickham had another advantage in Mrs. Gardiner's eyes. Years earlier, she had lived in the same part of Derbyshire where he had grown up. They shared acquaintances and memories. He spoke freely of the past, of Pemberley, and of Mr. Darcy's late father, whom she had known well. Mrs. Gardiner praised the elder Darcy's character warmly. When Wickham spoke of how he had been treated by the present Darcy, she tried to recall what she once heard of him as a boy, and convinced herself that he had always been proud and ill-natured. And so, without argument, without proof, judgment quietly settled in. This chapter does not end with heartbreak or decision. It ends with observation, with affection that might be imprudent, with comfort that might be misleading, and with a warning, spoken softly but clearly, for those who are willing to notice.